Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video I'll be doing the AFL Fantasy Premium Forward options for the 2024 season. This one is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter video just because at the moment there is very little forward options, to be honest with you. There is like about 8 or so that are actually really worthwhile, probably even less, to be honest with you, and that is just solely based on a lot of players. We lost obviously the big midfield group that were in there last year, and we also basically have no actual full-time mids that aren't about 30 years old, so that is another problem in itself. But before we get into the video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload, and let's get into this video. So as you can see here, we have it loaded up and Caleb Daniel is the number 1 player on total points. But if we go to price, that was from last year. If we go to price, Jack Macrae outdoes him slightly. 829k, and Jack Macrae is one that I think you just sort of have to own just because he's non-buy, and I don't really think if we look at DFS, and then we also, well, we can scroll over to 40wire, but we can do it this way. If we look at the Dogs midfield, last year you had English, Bont, Libba, and we make this just a little bit bigger for you guys. You had English, Bont, Libba, Treloar. Macrae still got 36%, and he was doing a lot better in this first 8 or so weeks, getting around that 45-50%, I would say, and then had around 16 around 20, 21 and 23. And then we look at his actual scores, and you will see, I think from memory, he's one that doesn't actually need to have the CBAs to actually score. If we look at his lows, he had a if we scroll down here, a 45 in round 22, and then also a 69. It looks like if I just make this a little bit smaller, you'll be able to see. Yeah, it looks like he's got a 45, a 51, and then an 80s, pretty much 80s across the board. But if you look at that first 6 weeks, if we actually go to it, the first 8 weeks of Jack Macrae last year, I think you'll find something. We'll see his average there in the first 8 weeks of 2023. If I can click properly, we said first 8, and you'll see that his average was 93.3 across those 8 weeks. So that was very close to what his actual fantasy points is, a 93 hit, 91.8 in there. So it will be interesting to see what his CBA numbers are, because I think you could see something very similar to this, but still getting a Jack Macrae at 829k. I still think there's not much could go necessarily wrong in the first 8 weeks, and there's only upside in the potential if he goes like 110, and it'll be quite annoying for those people that, especially in the forward line that's so weak, if he does go that 110 across the first 8 or so weeks with the bye rounds. There will be a couple people that just bleed a lot of points in the forward line because of that. So I think Macrae is almost a must-have at this point, and that is why he is 42% owned. Dustin Martin, 812, does have the early buy, and I think it's one that we can pick up post-buy, because unlike Macrae, I don't think there's a world in which he goes nuts and goes crazy, even though I think he might have a higher top-end. Macrae just pips him for top-end score of 129 against a 127 of Martin. Martin obviously does have the higher lower-end score, but he is a lot older. If we go to Dusty Martin in itself, if we go to Richmond, then we go Dusty Martin. It's going to be a last name, isn't it? Martin, there we go, got him. You'll see 20 and at an average of 90, 20 games, average of 90, and got off to a very slow start. But then after the bye, he was actually on a burner here, where you can see 91, 94, 97, 90, 90, 127 and 113. That is going to be best top 6 forwards this year if he does average 90, in my opinion, as there's not many forwards that are going to really do that. If we look at Martin through here, if we scroll down, here he is. you'll see, I believe, with Martin that was, definitely a much better year than last year, which is the big worry with Martin is that, yes, 2022 was a small sample size of 16 games, but he hasn't really done what he did in the without heavy CBA numbers. Like we've seen, basically, his 2020 would have been very, very similar to what he did in the last season in 2023, where he went in 2020 in the regular season, he went 74.7, times that by 1.25, and you get a 93, and that was on 76% CBAs. So it'll be, I think, all these years you can basically count all of the years from basically his rookie year onwards as years where he would have probably had 75% CBAs at least, if not 80. And that's why he ended up going 97, 97, 103, 107, 113, 92, 96. And then the 93 in the COVID year, 81, 72, and then 90. So I don't know if he will necessarily, what he's going to put up, whether he'll put up a 70 or an 80 or a 90. That's sort of up in the air. I think it will be the mid-80s that he'll put up in the end. But whether or not that's actually best top 6 is a question. So I think Dusty, with the early buy, is a wait-and-see sort of guy. And we can pick him up after the buys in round 7, round 8. When he's sort of done his, when he's sort of shown to us that he's a natural good scorer. So I reckon he's just a wait and see type of guy. Caleb Daniel, I'm just avoiding him because he's, his role's sort of indifferent, and I know this is a little bit of a thing, and I probably shouldn't be doing it, but he is horrific at Mars Stadium, like absolutely horrific. I think he averages something like 25 or 30 at Mars Stadium, I believe. I believe that's one of the sort of outback stadiums. Even though he does have West Coast round 3, will be an interesting one if some people do decide to go for him. But I believe he is, 5% owned. I think a lot of people are just waiting to see his role, and I think that's a fair assessment, given that he can go, and I think he will go mid-80s, which will be top 8, top 10. But it's whether can he get that roll back where he can go potentially, I don't know if he's ever actually gone above, if he's gone actually above the, I spelled that wrong, there we go. If he's ever actually gone above 95 or so, I think that's where he tops out before. No, this was 93.8 in 2019. I don't believe he was doing CBAs back then. I believe that was a lot of kick-ins, I want to say. Which caused that. But as you can see here, he's had a 5% CBA, a 0, and a 19% CBA. I would like to see him get back into the back line where he gets that extra 50 or 60 kicks, which is around about 150 to 180 points, which is around about 7 to 8 points worth of points per game. And that sort of covers the increased tackles that he gets in the midfield. But I would just like to see his game go back to the point where he was having that. Even here, this actually looks like a good season here. 26. If he can have a season of 25 touches and sort of 6 marks, he's never had 6 marks actually. If he can just become one of those sort of 5 mark guys, 25 and 5, I think that would be sort of where he is best suited. Because he would get, roughly 51, 7, and he'd probably be mid-90s in that way if he was around that 25 and 5 mark guy, and that would be definitely top 6 at the moment. So top 6, I reckon, for the forwards is going to probably be 88, 87 is probably going to be around the marker where we're looking at, as we've got 4 guys at 90, Toby Green at 89, even though he looks to have been taking a step back in a fantasy relevant style. Dylan Moore could push it. I don't think Kerno will push it. Shea Bolton could again. Zorko won't, I don't think. Luke Jackson won't. Bailey Smith is obviously out. Jeremy Cameron getting older but does have a massive injury game influence in that score. And Taylor Walker getting older. And then we're starting to get into the 80s. So I think 88 for top 6 is sort of the line, even though that is sort of what we're starting the season as, because I don't really see many will grow, and I think some will get will slow down, and we'll get 1 or 2 DPPs come mid-season. So next up we go Sam Flanders, and I reckon this guy would be in my side if it wasn't for the round 2 bye. He may also just find a way back into my side given that it may be a fact that with the round 2 bye, I reckon I can still cover that because we've got Darcy Jones as well in that. I don't think they have. Do they have the round 2 bye? They have the round 3 bye, whereas Gold Coast have the round 3 bye. So that sucks. Can't use a bench option there. But we may have Cooper Simpson playing by then. We may have, and I'll have 5 guys anyway, so it'll be only 1 guy that will be missing in that round. But I'll have Sean Manor or Cooper Simpson probably, or like a Darcy Wilson to cover in that round. So I think I could actually end up going Sam Flanders just because he's still going to go 85. And I just had a sneaky look at his VFL numbers, obviously. When he gets major midfield time, he goes nuts. I think in the AFL it was about a 120 to finish the year, and in the VFL it was like a 140. So it was quite like silly numbers that he was putting up. And if he does get that 30% CBA role, I could see him in that high half forward role. I could see him putting up 90, 95, and just having a banker there could almost be crucial. But also he does play the 22 games, so you do need a little bit of upside there. So it'll be interesting to see his role in round 0. If he does get that upside, he could be a 110 guy, but if he doesn't get that upside, he'll be sort of that if he doesn't get the role that we really need, of at least 30% CBAs, 35, 40%, then I don't see him being a value option. So he is more of a role-based guy, whereas a couple of the other forwards are sort of score-based for round 0 forwards. Dylan Moore's a guy that may just end up in my side just because plays 22 games, and I could easily see him, if you look at his floor, was a 64. So the thing about Dylan Moore is that he has a really high floor for a forward, so that's decent. And I think with the Hawks' young midfield, I don't think he may not get as much time as we want necessarily in there, but has shown he can score without the CBAs, which is good. So hopefully with Hawthorn getting a little bit better, he'll see a little bit more of the ball as it will be going into their forward line a little bit more. So I think he could be a forward that averages 92, 93, but could just be a forward that you get off the bounce just because you've got all these other forwards that are sort of, they have the round 0 and other things, and he could just be a guy just to plop in there so that you don't have to deal with like a Adams, Jordan and McRae in the round 6, etc., as that'll be before DPPs. And so, yeah, there's that worry that you have too many of those sort of on the same bye round in the same line. And then you got Charlie Curnow. With the early buy, no thank you. With the early buy, Shea Bolton, I wouldn't say to grab him at the moment, but he could be one that bolts early and you sort of almost have to grab him, but I don't think he will. I think he's the guy that has the massive tendency to drop like a 40 if we actually go to Bolton. And we go Bolton, I think you'll see he'll have probably 4 or 5 sub 60 scores, I would say. If we look at his scores this year, he's got 1, a 63. He's actually got a lot of just mid 60s, a 31 that was last year, 64. So it's actually not as bad as what I thought it was, but a lot of just 70s, which are just middling out type of scores, and then a 78 as well. So 9 games where he's got under 80, it looks like, and make that 10 games under 80. And that sort of is just an indication that sometimes he can just not be involved in games. So I don't think he's one that I'll want, even though he has that sort of 1-2-5 potential. Look at this run here that he had. I'll sort of just get rid of the guys, the scores around it. But this run here where he went 1-2-4, 85, 103, 120, that run there looks promising, but I don't think in the long run he will be actually usable, to be honest with you. If we actually look at that sort of, this is like a 6-week span here. You'll see 105 in a 6-week span with 86% time on ground, and he got, is that CBAs in that time? It looks like he was getting full mid-time, which will be interesting to see if he does, because if he does, he could be a little bit upside, but I just don't like the tendency of the role, given that it looks like Liam Baker will be that full-time mid at the Tigers. Zorko getting too old and has the early bye. Luke Jackson only did well when there was when Sean Darcy was out, as he sort of needs that ruck time. Yes, there were some things, and it looks like he will be a jack of all trades, to be honest, playing forward, ruck, and a little bit on ball. But I just don't think that Jackson has the numbers to do it. To be honest, there was an article written up by someone on DT about Jackson, and it basically said just stick away from him. The numbers, yes, he has had improvement each year with Jackson, but the numbers basically say if he doesn't get that ruck role, he is in for a couple of absolute stinkers. If we just type him up and get him up here, there we go. You will see basically with Luke Jackson, you will see here, he has had, where is it here? And this was when he was playing as the solo ruck from basically here on out. It was a solo ruck last year. He went and averaged 97. So that means that as a non-solo ruck here, you can see he went and averaged, I mean, he did still really well, and then I don't know why he was another ruck patch he had here. He was not solo rucking this whole time here. Let me just grab this up. That one and that one and that one. So when he's not solo ruck, he averages 73 it looks like. So yeah, it just shows what is he priced at? 83 or something? He's priced at, where is he? Yeah, he's priced at 85, averages 74 without the solo ruck, and averages 94 with it or something like that. So, yeah, that just shows the discrepancy of when he is solo ruck and when he is not solo ruck. So, definitely a trade-in if Darcy just goes down with an injury. Don't hope that we have injuries on guys, but would definitely help a little bit if he went down. But yeah, so don't go Jackson if Darcy is playing. Do go Jackson if Darcy is not playing. As simple as that. Bailey Smith injured. Jeremy Cameron, actually an interesting one to look at. You would say generally the fantasy brain says don't go key forwards. Jeremy Cameron and sort of Luke Jackson are almost an exception with that, with their scoring. 83 last year, and he does have a -3 game, which Gary Rowan decided to knock him out. So if you take that 83 out, because I think that is a fair representation to take a -3 game out, as I don't think a player of Jeremy Cameron's caliber is going to finish on a -3, then he goes up to, I think, an 87.5, which is 4.5 points of upside, basically, straight up. So there is upside with with Jeremy Cameron. Would need to see him get a decent score in the practice match, to be honest with you. Obviously, we don't have the round 0 with him, but if all the guys fail in round 0, like Taylor Adams, you have Baker fail, you have James, all those sort of, and you've got Fisher injured. I wouldn't be surprised if some go something like, and Flanders fails, then some go someone like a Jeremy Cameron or something like that as, yeah, he's going to probably be reliable for 80, 85 points. But there's also the fact that the Geelong midfield is just basically just their centre clearances, I believe, have gone from top in the comp to almost bottom. So he's not going to be able to get that lead up sort of mark and set shot that was happening a lot in their premiership year. So it'll be interesting to see if he doesn't get those sort of +6s and those as many goals as he did in his premiership year, to be honest with you. So will be probably a watch, but definitely a guy I could see me bringing in if Geelong have a good run of games. Taylor Walker, no, thank you. As a key forward, I don't expect him to back it up, and only really has it because I believe he played both North and also played the likes of... Did he play North? Let me actually check this, if he played North twice last year and also West Coast twice. Let's just see. He played, let's just see. West Coast once, North once. He played West Coast twice and bagged, I think it was something, he bagged 19 goals against West Coast. I don't expect West Coast to be as bad as they were, so I don't expect Taylor Walker to do that. So I don't think key forwards are going to have too much of a say. And he was also at one point, I think, being marked by Oscar Allen. That just shows you the injury crisis that West Coast had. but I don't think he'll be that bad, and I think Taylor Walker will drop back to a 75 or so. Heaney is is an interesting one. I don't think he gets necessarily the role that he had when he was averaging 88, 90. I think he'll be more of a half forward rather than a 30-40% CBAs that I believe he was having when he was doing his best. If we look at Isaac Heaney here. If we look at this, you'll see Isaac Heaney in the better 3, 3, 13, 12. In this 93 year that he had in 2018, I want to say that he was having a little bit better for midfield time, as it was only averaging about 0.9 goals per game, whereas in 2022, when he averaged 88 again, he was averaging 2 goals a game. So I want to say he was getting more midfield time in his earlier years, but he does have a tendency to be able to go 90. He did it for back-to-back-to-back seasons and then did it again in 2022. So we'll see if he does it in 2023, but certainly one that you can jump on, like Jeremy Cameron, a guy later on in the year, as if we actually look at his output, he has a 28. Did he get injured in that 28? Let's actually look at that 28 here. If I get rid of Walker and Dusty Martin, and then go to match stats and go to 2023, you'll see he had a 28 against Melbourne in round 3 where he just didn't get involved. But outside of that, his next lowest looks to be a 60 odd, 51 in against GWS and a 64. But so outside of that 51 and that 28, I know I'm taking two out of his 22. So that's what's that, 1 in 11, so that's about 9% of his scores. If you take out 9% of his scores, then his worst score is about a 60 odd. So yeah, 64, something like that as a low, realistically, shouldn't be too bad. If we look at his across 2022, what was his low? 2022, a 64 looks like, again, what he sort of averaged. I mean, that was grand final. He did have a 51 again in 2022, but he did have some big scores, like a 103, a 103, 111, 95, 107 when he was getting all right CBA time, and then a 121. So he was actually going off the hook. And I remember almost thinking to myself in 2022, do you almost get Isaac Heaney just because he's going 107 across the first 5 games? So he does have that scoring potential, but early buy and unknown sort of role, I would be staying clear of him. How many percent actually own him? 1.45. Schultz, early buy, shouldn't do too much better than a 78, even though he's in a better forward line. I would maybe put that up to like an 82, but early buy negates that value there. Ben Keys only did really well just because he had that stint in the midfield where he went something like 600 points across about 6 weeks. Outside of that, he probably averaged about 70 across the whole season. Taylor Adams is a round 1 look at and see how it goes. 77 average for the year, 80 across his last 3, and will have a much better role. I mean, we've gone through this and we'll go through this probably count 3 or 4 more times across the whole year. Taylor Adams should be a premium option. And then once we get through sort of Taylor Adams, I know that we've gone through only about, 10 or so players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, sort of 17 players to Taylor Adams. You're sort of getting to the outside of the premium sort of options. So I reckon that's sort of where I'm going to cut it for the premiums, as I don't really see a guy averaging sort of 75 or so as a premium option, to be honest with you. And we've already covered down to the 690k mark for the forwards. So anyway, that pretty much is the video there for the forwards. A lot shorter than the primos for the midfield, as that was a long video. So next up will be the AFL. Well, it's obviously AFL, the mid prices for the defenders. Then we have mid price midfield. Then we have mid-price forwards, which will probably be a very, very long video. Then we've got Ruckman, and that'll be their whole line in itself, in its entirety. And then we will have the I guess, rookie guys, and we'll go through and we'll probably spend almost a video on each rookie line. I reckon will be a way to go, except for the rucks, we'll do the rucks in their entirety, as there's only about 7 or 8 rucks to actually really notably look at, to be honest, across the whole field. But that is the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.